stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Well, good morning and welcome to CBS News Mornings. It's almost 7 o'clock here in New York City. I'm Anne-Marie Green, and here's a look at the stories grabbing our attention right now. Severe weather is threatening millions of people today after tornadoes ripped through several southern states. We're going to show you where the storms are headed next and the destruction that the storms left behind. Also, the president is gearing up for a major speech about lowering gas prices. As he looks to boost his struggling popularity and approval rating, we're going to preview the big announcement expected today to ease some of that pain at the pump. Plus, our team coverage continues across Ukraine as the war enters a 6th week this morning, with little sign of Russia keeping its promise to scale back certain attacks. Then in Money Watch, we're tracking potential changes to popular 401k plans and the impact of a new push by airlines to lift coronavirus requirements. Then we'll bring you the harrowing journey of an American mental health specialist and his family forced to make a daring escape out of Ukraine.
One of those gentlemen that were protecting us was shot and killed out front of our complex. So that was pretty much an indicator that this is getting really, really close to home.
So we will share what he witnessed on his path to safety and how he plans to help others still hoping to escape the violence. All right, so back to that weather, severe weather, slamming parts of the South as a massive system packing powerful winds and possible tornadoes heads east. Watches and warnings are in effect across Georgia after storms pounded parts of the state overnight. This comes after a tornado ripped through Arkansas yesterday, injuring at least 7 people and damaging neighborhoods, schools, and businesses. Part of Missouri, Mississippi, and Tennessee are also recovering from severe storms. So coming up later this hour, Weather Channel meteorologist Jim Cantori will have more on the system's path and what to expect throughout the rest of the day. And we are following the latest developments out of Virginia, where 1 person is dead and 2 others have been rescued in a Navy plane crash. It happened during a routine exercise near the coast yesterday evening. Authorities say both crew members are being treated for non-life-threatening injuries. However, the cause of the crash remains unclear. Back to Ukraine now, and Russia has launched a new wave of attacks across Ukraine. That is despite pledging to scale back operations near Kyiv. And this comes as both sides have reportedly agreed to a human corridor to allow people to leave the besieged city of Mariupol. Meantime, new details are emerging that Vladimir Putin may not be getting the full story about what's happening on the battlefield. Bradley Blackburn has more.
The White House says senior advisors to Russian President Vladimir Putin are afraid to tell him the truth about the war in Ukraine.
We believe that Putin is being misinformed by his advisors about how badly the Russian military is performing.
Officials say that could complicate a future peace agreement if Putin thinks he's in better shape than he really is.
That he may not fully understand the degree to which his forces are failing in Ukraine. That's a little discomforting.
A top British spy chief noted the struggles Russian forces are having in the battlefield.
We've seen Russian soldiers, short of weapons and morale, refusing to carry out orders, sabotaging their own equipment, and even accidentally shooting down their own aircraft.
Tatiana Chornoval is a former politician and mother of 2. Now she serves on Ukraine's front lines, taking out tanks. She told CBS News this was one of her hits. The Russians are fighting stupidly, she says. They don't have a strategy or tactics. They're falling into the same traps. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky thanked President Biden for an additional $500 million in aid, which will go toward maintaining government services.
All right, so for more on this, we want to bring in writer and journalist Tomasz Żywiecki. You are joining me now from Kyiv. Tomasz, it is very good to see you again, sir. And I know you've been traveling around a lot, trying to chronicle everything that's happening and putting yourself at risk. So it is really great to see you looking as good as you do. So let me ask you a few questions. You have been traveling around. We heard that according to the negotiations, Russia had promised to scale back some attacks, but that doesn't seem to be happening. What are you seeing as you travel around the country, and how have you been able to travel around?
Thank you so much for an invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. Currently, I'm in Kiev, and the situation here is quite calm. But during the night, there were some shellings, and of course, there are still checkpoints, and police and army is checking everyone who is coming here. The situation is much more severe in the eastern parts of Ukraine. 2 weeks ago, I was in the city of Mykolaiv that was under a constant shelling by Russian army. We are traveling by car and trying to find the roads that are safe, because particularly closer to the front line, actually you cannot envisage which roads are really safe. There is a very huge risk to be ambushed by Russian forces. So traveling around Ukraine is, of course, still very risky. And despite claims of the Kremlin that they are withdrawing part of the forces from the Kiev region, I am afraid that it might be just a military deception. And it's even more dangerous taking into consideration that people are coming back to Ukrainian capital. And if new missile strikes start, there might be much more victims than it used to be before.
So the effect may be that people feel like Kyiv is safe again and they may return, and that's not the case. As you've been traveling around, I want to say, I've seen there's all sorts of video online. As you've been traveling around, have you seen roads being sabotaged? Have you seen mines on roads?
I saw the roads that there were mines. There are some roads where there are Russian mines. There are also some roads where there are Ukrainian mines. Even here in Kiev, there are mines on some streets. But of course, these streets are protected by army. But still, it is better to keep to the main paths, not to go to the sidewalks, because it might be dangerous. And unfortunately, there are reports about the people who were killed by mines left by Russian army. And Russian army is right now shooting to civilians, also civilians' cars. In Mykolaiv, in a hospital, I talked to the lady who was traveling with her family close to Mykolaiv, and they were attacked by Russian soldiers. They were in a normal civil car. 3 of her relatives were killed. And after this attack, Russian soldiers robbed them from money and from smartphones. She was seriously injured and she was left to die there. Fortunately, she survived. But I am pretty sure that such stories are right now happening all over the eastern Ukraine.
So, I mean, based on what you're seeing, there's no scaling back. And at this point, there should not be a debate as to whether or not civilians are being targeted. But we're not just talking targeted by shelling. We're talking targeted in a like, this isn't by mistake. The soldiers are very well aware that there are civilians on the other ends of their gun.
Of course, I am pretty sure that the Russian army is shooting directly to civilians. They are also shooting to journalists. There were American journalists killed, and we even removed inscription press from our car because, in my opinion, Russian soldiers are deliberately attacking journalists to kill the truth, as much as they are killing civilians to intimidate Ukrainian people and to try to break their will of fighting. So right now, no one is safe in Ukraine, and I am pretty sure that Russia is going to continue these attacks. Right now, they are withdrawing some forces, probably to replenish supplies and to replenish military equipment, and also to send new soldiers. It is currently quite hard to say where new offensive can start. In my opinion, it might be around Kharkiv, maybe also around the Mykolaiv, and I think that there are going still to be some missile attacks here in Kiev.
Wow. Listen, Tomasz, stay safe. Really appreciate you talking to us. I encourage people to check out your Twitter, your Instagram. Really interesting information and observations there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the invitation. And also, please stay safe.
Yeah, you too. You too, Tomasz. Thanks. Well, back here at home, President Biden is preparing to take new steps to lower gas prices for millions of Americans. He's expected to announce the release of 1 million barrels of oil per day from the country's strategic petroleum reserve amid growing calls to ease the pain at the pump. Meanwhile, we are learning new details about the ongoing investigation into the president's son, Hunter Biden. Federal officials are taking a closer look into his foreign business dealing with several countries, including China. Catherine Herridge has the latest on that.
Multiple sources tell CBS News that the federal investigation into Hunter Biden's business practices is broader than previously known. The probe is exploring whether the younger Biden and his associates violated tax, money laundering, and foreign lobbying laws. Business records reviewed by CBS News and documents released by Republicans in Congress indicate multiple financial transactions involving Hunter Biden, his firm, and a Chinese energy company called CEFC. Republicans allege that the company is an arm of the Chinese government. In 2017, the year after Joe Biden left the vice presidency, a $1 million retainer was signed with the Chinese energy company for Hunter Biden's services as a lawyer. His client, a CEFC official, Patrick Ho, was later convicted of international bribery and money laundering charges for unrelated work in Africa. This week on the Senate floor, Republican Chuck Grassley presented financial records that he said showed six-figure payments from the Chinese energy company to Hunter Biden's firm.
Hunter Biden and James Biden served as the perfect vehicle by which the Communist Chinese government could gain inroads here in the United States.
Allegations about Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings reached a fever pitch during the 2020 campaign.
Hunter was being paid for access to his vice president father.
Earlier this month, White House spokesperson Jen Psaki was asked about the current investigation.
I'd point you to the Department of Justice and Hunter Biden's representatives. I'm a spokesperson for the United States. He doesn't work for the United States.
An attorney for Hunter Biden did not respond to CBS News. Last year, he told correspondent Anthony Mason the president did not financially benefit.
Have you ever given your father money from any of your business ventures?
No.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Directly or indirectly?
Directly or indirectly.
Well, the investigation into the January 6th assault on the Capitol is expanding to look at more events leading up to the riot. A federal grand jury in Washington issued subpoenas to some government officials from former President Trump's inner circle, who they say helped plan, fund, and execute the rally. It also includes people possibly involved in Donald Trump's attempts to stop the certification of President Biden's Electoral College victory. Meanwhile, Trump's son-in-law and former senior advisor Jared Kushner is expected to face the January 6th committee today. The interview makes Kushner the highest-ranking member of the Trump administration to appear before the panel and the first Trump family member to be questioned. We are following new details on the disappearance of 18-year-old Naomi Arion. Officials confirmed that they found her body near a gravesite in Nevada, east of Reno. Now, deputies said that a tip led them to that remote area. She was last seen 3 weeks ago, getting into a passenger seat of her own car outside of a Walmart. 41-year-old Troy Driver was arrested and charged with kidnapping. Well, from luxurious bridal gowns to army assault vests, one Ukrainian fashion brand is joining the resistance by sewing up crucial military gear as Russia's offensive escalates. I will speak with the company's CEO later on this hour. And the countdown is on. 6 people are gearing up for the journey of a lifetime to the edge of space. We're going to have more on today's Blue Origin launch coming up later this hour. But before all of that, it is 7:13 on the East Coast. It's time to check your local weather.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Some Republicans are now accusing companies like Twitter and Facebook of targeting conservatives.
They've had unchecked power to censor.
I do not have access to my main Facebook account.
I wasn't given an explanation. I was just like, what did I do?
It's not okay to shut down my voice simply because it's not the same as yours.
How those rules are enforced is something that the rest of us know very, very little about.
The First Amendment protects all of us from the government limiting our speech. The companies have the ability to decide what speech they will allow. They're not the government.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
Oh my God, the truck is sinking.
Devastating flooding has reached catastrophic levels.
Rising sea levels are threatening America's coasts.
You would have to take that house and put it on stilts 10 feet tall. If the street is filled with salt water, what difference does it make how high you make your house?
The highest rental rates is exactly where the elevation is highest.
This was the evidence to prove that carbon gentrification was real.
Pay $1,800 in 5 days or you have to leave. Were you scared?
Yes.
Every single person who stood up and said, I am not paying this rent increase, received an eviction.
Haitians built this place and you're getting kicked out.
Yes.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah.
We found it.
You're kidding me?
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
The COVID economic shutdown hit Las Vegas harder than any other major city in the nation.
It's decimated the entertainment community.
So even though it looks fairly busy, this is really just a fraction of what business was like prior to COVID.
Last week, there was another large hotel chain that 18,000 were let go.
I haven't seen any jobs that are even close to what I was making.
We're trying to keep things as normal for our kids. I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son.
And I see every day people losing their homes, having to leave Las Vegas.
If I have to start over somewhere else, I have to start over.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
Well, the time now is 4:17 a.m., dark and early in the city of San Francisco. You're looking at Coit Tower, right on top of Telegraph Hill, and it's looking pretty good in the city by the bay. Meantime, here in New York City, it is 7:17. CBS News Mornings is back with a look at some of the stories that you may have missed while you were offline. Beginning April 11th, any American applying for a U.S. passport will be able to choose an X as their gender marker. The State Department says that it's part of an effort to serve all citizens regardless of gender identity. In addition, TSA is set to implement gender-neutral screening procedures. The Biden administration is expected to lift the Title 42 immigration policy in late May. That's according to people familiar with the plans who spoke to CBS News. Title 42 was first implemented in March of 2020. It allows authorities to rapidly deport immigrants in order to stop the spread of COVID-19. More than 1.7 million people have been expelled under this policy. A Chinese court is deferring its verdict in the closed-door trial of Australian journalist Cheng Lei. Australia's foreign minister announced the trial ended today. Cheng, an anchor for Chinese state media outlet CGTN, was detained in August of 2020 for allegedly supplying state secrets to a foreign country. Her family says that she is innocent. Well, we are learning new details about an ongoing federal investigation into the alleged foreign business dealings of President Biden's son, Hunter. We're going to head on over to Washington, where Catherine Herridge is covering this story for us. We ran your story a little bit earlier. Catherine, I'm really eager to talk to you about this. How did this investigation even get started?
Well, Anne-Marie, good morning. Based on our reporting here at CBS News, the investigation began as a tax inquiry several years ago, and then it expanded into a federal probe involving the FBI and IRS. And then sometime around 2018, that's when it took this broader scheme. And right now, based on our reporting, we believe that it's looking at issues related to tax fraud, money laundering, and then also violations of foreign lobbying laws.
Okay, so let's talk about these violations. Hunter Biden was doing business all over the place. Obviously, we know a lot about this, what happened in Ukraine, but now we're talking about China. So what's the violation here?
Well, Anne-Marie, there's something called FARA, which stands for the Foreign Agents Registration Act. And in very simple terms, what it requires of American citizens is that if they're being paid to act to the benefit of a foreign government, so they're lobbying here in the United States on behalf of, let's say, country X, they need to file with the Justice Department so there's transparency about their transactions. And prior to 2016, if there was a FARA problem, typically what you saw is that the paperwork would be updated or refiled. So there was a regularizing of the documents. But what we saw after 2016 is that FARA was kind of weaponized in the sense that it was brought against several members of the Trump administration as criminal charges for failing to notify the Justice Department about their activities on behalf of a foreign government, most notably the former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn.
So last year, Hunter Biden actually spoke to Sunday morning correspondent Tracy Smith about this investigation. I want to play some of that sound.
I can say this, is I'm cooperating completely. And I am absolutely certain, 100% certain, that at the end of the investigation, that I will be cleared of any wrongdoing.
You're 100% certain.
I'm 100% certain of it. And all I can do is cooperate and trust in the process.
So what do we know about his level of cooperation? Is he still cooperating now?
The latest reporting we have is it was first reported by a print outlet that he had paid back taxes. We were not steered away that as being fact. That would matter to any inquiry that's looking at whether he fully paid the tax that was owed on the money that he earned when he was acting on behalf of a number of foreign governments. It's a little tricky with tax law, and I'm going to try and simplify it to the best of my ability. Tax law is designed so that if you fail to pay your taxes, that can help you in the sentencing phase if charges are brought, but it doesn't get you off the hook, because if it did, you'd have a situation when many people would just not pay their federal tax and then only make good on it if they were caught after the fact.
So leading up to the 2020 election, though, we heard an awful lot about Hunter Biden's laptop that he left at a store in Delaware. Any more information about that? I don't know if there's any overlap when it comes to this investigation, but what can you tell us?
Well, there's sort of two pots of information. There's information that was found on this laptop back during the 2020 election cycle. A statement was put out by several dozen former intelligence officials who said it had the hallmarks of a Russian disinformation campaign, and that was really latched onto by then-candidate Trump's supporters to dismiss the records that were on this laptop or the hard drive. And then there's a second pot of records, which I'll call banking and financial records, which have come from independent sources from that laptop. So individuals we know through our reporting who were subpoenaed and provided records to this grand jury in Delaware. So you've got a constellation, believe me, thousands of pages of financial records and wire transactions that have been reviewed by this grand jury as they look at these sort of three key issues.
Spoken like a woman who's probably had to go through a lot of this stuff to get to the nuggets of truth there. Catherine, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So today marks the third day of severe weather to threaten the South. Let's turn it over to meteorologist Jim Cantori with our partners at the Weather Channel. Jim, is today going to be anything like yesterday?
Anne-Marie, it's been a very busy 24 hours, and we are expecting another active day here. Just take a look at the past 24 hours, where we were kind of looking at the radar over time and all the storm reports that followed. We had damaging winds. We had tornadoes in through here. A busy day. 23 is the current count of reports. That number is expected to go up, and then the Weather Service offices will get out there and confirm these as we go on in time. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got today. If you look at the area, it's big. We got to go northeast, New York State, all the way down into the Florida Panhandle. So let's break it down for you in sections. Let's start with the south, where we've already had active storms, active tornado warnings this morning. Our Torcon number's not as high as yesterday, but 3's not 0. And we've already had a lot of these storms produce tornado warnings this morning in the Florida Panhandle. That's expected to continue. We may get a little lull in the action, but as that's going on, we get a little heating going on, right, in South Carolina, in North Carolina. So that may add a little fuel for our thunderstorms as we get into this afternoon. And notice those storms pushing down toward the Orlando area as we get toward midnight tonight. So ongoing storms. The Northeast is not going to be a morning event. It's going to be an afternoon event, and it's going to start through western Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio, and then push on to the east. So notice not much here, some rain, some showers, but then, the atmosphere starts to light up around 3 p.m., pushing through Harrisburg, pushing through D.C., Philly, New York, Albany, damaging wind threat, very, very possible. And then look what happens. Winter says, I want another shot at you, so I'm going to bring some snow showers back into the picture, and that'll be the situation tonight and on into tomorrow. Another busy 24 hours, Anne-Marie, and you can catch live coverage of the severe weather threat all day on the Weather Channel television network.
Jim, I feel like weather's overstaying his welcome. He's had plenty of shots. Jim Cantori, thank you. You can also get the latest on the weather in your area on the CBS News app. It gives you access to all of our CBS News national and our local streams. It's for free, anytime, anywhere. Well, it could take a few weeks for organizers of the Academy Awards to finish their review into Will Smith slapping Chris Rock during Sunday's show. In a statement released yesterday, the Academy said Smith was asked to leave after the slap, but refused. Rock had made a joke about Smith's wife losing her hair. Jada Pinkett Smith has responded, saying, quote, "This is a season for healing, and I'm here for it." She did that on Instagram. Meantime, Rock took to the stage last night for the first time since the Oscars. He performed in front of a sold-out crowd in Boston. The comedian briefly referred to the incident, and he said that he was still processing what happened, and at some point, he would talk more about it. Bruce Willis is taking a step back from his acting career. Willis's family announced on Instagram yesterday that the action star has been diagnosed with aphasia. That's a brain disorder that makes it difficult to speak and understand language. Willis's career has spanned 4 decades, and he's best known for his performances in major films like Die Hard and Pulp Fiction. President Biden is urging Congress to pass more COVID funding in order to have enough vaccines available this coming fall. Dr. Celine Gounder from Kaiser Health News joins me after the break with all the latest details on that. And coming up later on Red and Blue, former President Trump's national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, joins us to discuss Russia's military strategy in Ukraine and the significance of the contentious Donbass region. You can stream that conversation in our 6 p.m. Eastern hour.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Some Republicans are now accusing companies like Twitter and Facebook of targeting conservatives.
They've had unchecked power to censor.
I do not have access to my main Facebook account.
I wasn't given an explanation. I was just like, what did I do?
It's not okay to shut down my voice simply because it's not the same as yours.
How those rules are enforced is something that the rest of us know very, very little about.
The First Amendment protects all of us from the government limiting our speech. The companies have the ability to decide what speech they will allow. They're not the government.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
Oh my God, the truck is sinking.
Devastating flooding has reached catastrophic levels.
Rising sea levels are threatening America's coasts.
You would have to take that house and put it on stilts 10 feet tall. If the street is filled with salt water, what difference does it make how high you make your house?
The highest rental rates is exactly where the elevation is highest.
This was the evidence to prove that climate gentrification was real.
Pay $1,800 in 5 days or you have to leave. Were you scared?
Yes.
Every single person who stood up and said, I am not paying this rent increase, received an eviction.
Haitians built this place, and you're getting kicked out.
Yes.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
The COVID economic shutdown hit Las Vegas harder than any other major city in the nation.
It's decimated the entertainment community.
So even though it looks fairly busy, this is really just a fraction of what business was like prior to COVID.
Last week, there was another large hotel chain that 18,000 were let go.
I haven't seen any jobs that are even close to what I was making.
We're trying to keep things as normal for our kids. I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son.
And I see every day people losing their homes, having to leave Las Vegas.
If I have to start over somewhere else, I have to start over.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now.
Well, welcome back to CBS News Mornings. The time now is 7:30. Let's get you caught up on some of the news you may have missed. President Biden is considering a plan to release 1 million barrels of oil a day for the next 6 months. The president hopes the move will ease pressure on global markets and surging oil prices. Russia has launched a new wave of attacks across Ukraine, despite pledging to scale back operations near Kyiv. This comes as new details emerge that Vladimir Putin may have been misled about Russian progress on the battlefield by some of his top aides. And former President Trump's son-in-law and former senior advisor Jared Kushner is expected to face the January 6th committee today. The interview makes Kushner the highest-ranking member of the Trump administration to appear before the panel and the first Trump family member to be questioned. President Biden is urging Congress to secure new COVID-19 funding. He says if no action is taken, the U.S. will not be able to test and vaccinate people at current rates. Ed O'Keefe has the latest from the White House.
President Biden today urged Congress to approve tens of billions of dollars in new COVID funding, warning the consequences of inaction will be severe.
This isn't partisan, it's medicine.
Mr. Biden got his second booster shot, as recommended by the CDC for older Americans. He said the lack of funding could mean the administration won't have enough vaccine supply to provide boosters in the fall.
Even worse, if we need a different vaccine for the future to combat a new variant, we're not going to have enough money to purchase it. We cannot allow that to happen.
Clinics providing COVID-related services are preparing for the worst. Community health development in Texas, where 43% of clients are uninsured, may have to cut back on COVID tests and vaccinations.
I'm hoping that it will not get to the point that we have to close down completely, but we will have to decrease some of the services that we provide.
Republicans, who recently joined some Democrats in rejecting more than $15 billion in new COVID funding, say the new money is unnecessary.
I mean, there's an enormous amount of money out of the $2 trillion bill passed last year that hadn't gone out yet.
While infections and hospitalizations are down sharply from the Omicron variant peak in January, about 700 people are still dying from COVID each day. The federal government has stopped buying monoclonal antibodies, a key drug that protects and treats people at risk of severe COVID-19, and it's cut the size of its shipments to states and territories.
Without more funding, we'll start to run out of them by the end of May.
All right, so for more on this, we want to bring in Dr. Celine Gounder. She's an infectious disease specialist and epidemiologist at the NYU Grossman School of Medicine and Bellevue Hospital, and she's also the host of the Epidemic Podcast. So, the epidemic that just keeps on rolling on, except the only problem is the funding is drying up. And so now, we hear the president asking Congress for more money. What does this mean in real life? It means that the HRSA uninsured programs that would allow for people who are uninsured to get the vaccine for free, that's supposed to end on April 5th. What does that mean? What happens after the deadline?
Well, and even already, the HRSA uninsured program has run out of money for treatment for diagnosis of people who do not have insurance. That's already happened.
Really?
April 5th, we ran out of money for vaccination of uninsured people. And so that's a big proportion of the population in this country that is uninsured, underinsured. They will no longer be able to walk into their local drugstore and get a free vaccine. Already, there are very few facilities where they can go to, healthcare providers they can go to, and get a free diagnosis, free treatment as an outpatient. And so this is really going to restrict our ability to control COVID.
Right. I mean, we won't be able to track it, particularly this new variant of COVID, where it seems to me a lot of people aren't showing any sort of symptoms, but they're still testing positive. Which means, you know, if they can't be tested, it's unlikely that they're going to be able to track how this particular virus is moving, I would think.
Yeah, that's certainly part of it. But, you know, remember, these are the most vulnerable people. The uninsured are the most vulnerable people. They're the most highly exposed. They've had the greatest burden of COVID all along. And now we're going to have tremendous barriers and frustrations in terms of trying to reach out to the very community that needs it most.
So let's talk about this possibility of another booster shot, right? They 50 plus, maybe if you're immunocompromised, if you want to beat this deadline, and you're considering getting a booster shot, what are some of the factors you should consider to determine whether or not it's worth it for you?
So if you are over 65, the data is stronger that you should get an extra dose. Similarly, if you're over 50 and you have underlying chronic medical conditions, you're immunocompromised, those would be other reasons to get a boost. But this is a situation where I would say walk, not run, to get that booster.
Could we see another surge? I was looking at the numbers and it doesn't look like a surge, but I wondered, is it a silent surge if people aren't getting tested?
It's a little too early to tell. We are seeing numbers creep up in cities like New York City, Boston, and so on. So we may be at the very beginning of one, but it's still a little too early to say.
All right, Dr. Gounder, thank you so much. Your 401ks could be getting a major boost. That's some good news. Coming up after the break, we will take a closer look at a bill that would allow workers to save more money and delay withdrawals. You're streaming CBS News Mornings.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Some Republicans are now accusing companies like Twitter and Facebook of targeting conservatives.
They've had unchecked power to censor.
I do not have access to my main Facebook account.
I wasn't given an explanation. I was just like, what did I do?
It's not okay to shut down my voice simply because it's not the same as yours.
How those rules are enforced is something that the rest of us know very, very little about.
The First Amendment protects all of us from the government limiting our speech. The companies have the ability to decide what speech they will allow. They're not the government.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
Oh my God, the truck is sinking.
Devastating flooding has reached catastrophic levels.
Rising sea levels are threatening America's coasts.
You would have to take that house and put it on stilts 10 feet tall. If the street is filled with salt water, what difference does it make how high you make your house?
The highest rental rates is exactly where the elevation is highest.
This was the evidence to prove that climate gentrification was real.
Pay $1,800 in 5 days or you have to leave. Were you scared?
Yes.
Every single person who stood up and said, I am not paying this rent increase, received an eviction.
Haitians built this place and you're getting kicked out.
Yes.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it. You're kidding me!
We got it. We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
The COVID economic shutdown hit Las Vegas harder than any other major city in the nation.
It's decimated the entertainment community.
So even though it looks fairly busy, this is really just a fraction of what business was like prior to COVID.
Last week, there was another large hotel chain that 18,000 were let go.
I haven't seen any jobs that are even close to what I was making.
We're trying to keep things as normal for our kids. I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son.
And I see every day people losing their homes, having to leave Las Vegas.
If I have to start over somewhere else, I have to start over.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
Americans with 401ks could be getting a boost in their retirement savings. The bipartisan bill passed by the House raises contribution limits for older workers and lets companies offer employees a small cash bonus for signing up for a plan. The bill now heads to the Senate. A cryptocurrency hack has targeted a blockchain network supporting the popular video game Axie Infinity. The hackers stole about $625 million in Ethereum and USDC, making it one of the largest crypto hacks in history. Condo owners affected by the Surfside building collapse in Florida will divide $83 million for property losses. A judge ruled Wednesday. Compensation for the families over the 98 deaths are still being determined, and the money will come from the sale of the now vacant beachfront land, as well as insurance policies. Meanwhile, major airlines are looking to ditch their coronavirus protocols. Money Watch reporter Megan Cirillo joins me now to talk a little bit more about this. So I heard that they were really pushing, executives were really pushing to drop all the protocols, not just the mask mandates. So let us start with, okay, it's one thing for airline executives to think it's about time, but what about health experts? What are they saying?
Right. Airline executives believe it'll be better for business if they drop these mandates. If they don't have a mask rule in place, that'll signal to the public that it's safe to fly. Right. But epidemiologists say that, well, it's okay to be having the conversation about when we should drop these mask rules and testing requirements, because it's unreasonable to expect that they're going to be in place for forever until there's no COVID left on Earth. Mm-hmm. That it's premature, especially because we've seen this new variant start to become dominant. So it's too early right now, given the current environment, to be seriously considering dropping mask rules in the air.
Right. And when I heard about this, I was thinking, okay, what could be why are they pushing for this? And I did consider the fact that we have seen some in-flight meltdowns over mask mandates. We're already having issues with people behaving badly on planes, but then the introduction of the mask mandates really gave some people a reason to act badly. Is that something that the CEOs are sort of talking about?
It is. It's something they brought up in their letter to the White House. They said that it has been unfair to burden, to task flight attendants who really weren't trained to be bouncers. They're effectively being tasked with enforcing these rules 30,000 feet in the air. Passengers can be testy to begin with. So they're having to deal with passengers who are angry because some of their fellow passengers aren't wearing masks, and then those passengers who don't want to comply with rules. And we've seen a number of altercations arise as a result. So I think airlines are eager to relieve flight attendants and other airline staff of that duty.
So it's not just mask mandates, right? Sometimes there's testing to get on a plane, or you have to prove that you're vaccinated. And we're planning a trip, and regulations change from week to week, so we're always checking. But we definitely have to have proof of full vaccination. Do they think if all of these restrictions are dropped, they'll actually see a boost in flyers?
That's the calculus they've made. But some experts I've talked to have said, the mask mandate, if the mask rule is dropped, that could deter people who are immunocompromised, who are older, who have young children who aren't yet vaccinated. That should be part of the threshold should be that everyone should be eligible. Everyone who wants one should be eligible for a vaccine before these mask rules are lifted. The testing piece is interesting. That could actually boost international travel, which has yet to rebound. So a colleague who's going to Ireland said she's afraid that if she tests positive while she's abroad, she'll have to quarantine in a foreign country for 10 days.
Right.
She'll have to, stay in a hotel for 10 more days. A lot of people can't assume that kind of financial risk. Yeah. So if airlines were to drop that testing piece, that could actually help boost international travel.
Yeah, that happened to a friend of mine who traveled overseas for the Christmas holiday. He immediately tested positive as soon as he got to the place. So his entire family got to enjoy their holiday at a beach resort, and he was in the quarantine hotel for the entire time. Megan, thank you so much.
Thanks, Anne Marie.
Well, from elegant wedding gowns to military tactical gear, Ukrainian-based bridal shop Milanova has changed their operations from sewing beautiful and ornate wedding dresses to making army vests and other protective gear as Russia escalates its attack. So here to discuss this is the CEO of Milanova, Yulana Kurichuk. I'm sorry, Yulana. I know that I probably challenged with your name there. But I find this so fascinating. You pivoted so quickly, not only to starting to make these, badly needed protective and medical supplies, but also moving your own staff away from dangerous areas to Poland so that you could continue to crank out those beautiful wedding dresses as well. Can you tell me just where did the idea come from, and how are you able to do this? How are you able to fund it? How are you able to get the fabrics in that you need?
Actually, we have took a decision from the first day because we had the BCP plan in place. So when we got the information that there is some attack is going on in central and eastern Ukraine, we have took decision to implement the BCP plan for the people relocation, and we had a critical list of the people to be relocated from Ukraine to Poland together with kids to be able to restore operations from here. And actually, for those people who remain in Lviv, because the biggest part of the team are still remain there. So we have took a decision to help with as much as possible. So we bought the materials from our own financing funds and give the people opportunity to volunteer and to make those things which is needed in our country.
And it's not just that, you're also, you're sort of tackling this on so many fronts. You're making blue and yellow gowns that you hope to give to influencers as a way of sort of spreading this message. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, of course. So when we relocated people to Poland, especially production team, and while we were waiting for the materials and the next steps to be done, they have made the initiative to create amazing blue and yellow gowns together with kids. You have seen this on the picture, to be able to sell them to some celebrities and influencers. First, to make a good communication, because fashion is always good in terms of communicating values. And on the other hand, we will be all the money which will be collected from those sales will be donated for Ukraine.
One of the things that I keep thinking is you could have just shut down business altogether, right? But instead you move many of your employees to Warsaw, where they are continuing to make these beautiful wedding dresses. And I was just thinking about just kind of how surreal it must be to have these people, putting rhinestones on these gorgeous dresses while just over the border your country is being pummeled. Do you ever think about the kind of extreme images, the two worlds that you continue to exist in?
Yeah, and actually, we also are still doing wedding dresses in Lviv, and we have a lot of people on the factories there. So I'm currently in Warsaw, but tomorrow I'm going back to the factory, and we will continue making all the best things for the people to keep them feeling secured, supported, etc. So yeah, we are combining it amazingly, because what we are doing, we are bringing things for love. So both a wedding dress and the military vest is both for life and for love. So the people are really happy to combine these two things together, because we are feeling that we are bringing a new life and protecting the people. So that's kind of totally different things, but we are combining those pretty well.
Yes, I see how they intersect. I wonder also if you're not only, helping to house some people, but you're also clearly giving them employment. Do you find yourself also having to kind of support them emotionally? And I don't know, maybe working helps you, emotionally get through this whole thing.
Yeah, even those interviews we are providing, and even now, it's supporting people a lot, because it means that what they're doing is counted. They can express what they are doing, because it's important for now to bring the people inspiration, daily communication. We have a group with all single employee from the company to provide them a daily communication of what is going on in company, what is our plan regarding the salary, regarding the sales, that they can feel protected, that they can feel that the tomorrow for them is insured, and they will get a salary next month, and they will be able to do what they are doing now. Amazing dresses, and also the things we need for Ukraine.
Yulana Kurichuk, thank you so much. Sewing together love and life. It's really amazing what you have been doing for your employees, and please stay safe.
Thank you so much.
Well, Minnesota native Joe Whitcomb is sharing his story of escaping Ukraine as Russia dropped its first bombs on the country. Kate Raditz from CBS News Minnesota has more on his story.
We were held up for about 3 days with the explosions and the bombs, and then the military Russians started moving in.
When we first met Joe Whitcomb, he was hearing air raid sirens going off in his Kyiv apartment.
Okay, hold on, I'm gonna go over here.
Today, the Princeton native spoke to us from Poland. He's been in the city of Torin for about a week after a 2-week-long escape from Ukraine.
One of those gentlemen that were protecting us was shot and killed out front of our complex. So that was pretty much an indicator that this is getting really, really close to home.
Whitcomb left Kyiv in the middle of the night. A train ride to the city of Rivne took 12 hours, just halfway.
We'd have to stop about every, whenever there was like Russian planes, jets, tanks that would be crossing.
From there, he met some Portuguese journalists who helped him eventually find a ride on the way to the border. He saw families saying goodbye to their husbands and fathers who had to stay behind.
It's heartbreaking and soul crushing.
Whitcomb, his girlfriend, and son are all safe.
They lost everything. I left everything behind too. Everything. So they don't have anything but what they could carry.
He and his company are now helping to raise money to get military protective resources to Ukraine. Kate Raditz, WCCO 4 News.
We are going to take a quick break, which means you have 3 minutes to download the free CBS News app on all your devices. Our app gives you the best of CBS News all in one place. And before we get to the break, of course, we're going to leave you with some late night laughs from our friend Stephen Colbert, who introduced us to Rocky the Robot Dog.
Next up on the Seagasm, guilt-ridden dog owners rejoice. Rocky is a new robot companion for your pooch when you're away. Rocky is a smartphone-controlled robot that allows you to interact with your pets from anywhere. That is also a $250 treat dispenser. Take a look.
You just gotta push 2 buttons on the side here and the top comes off. And as you can see, there are 15 chambers for loading treats into.
And if you want to simulate the effect of what a dog is gonna do to that robot, simply roll a dog treat inside $250.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Some Republicans are now accusing companies like Twitter and Facebook of targeting conservatives.
They've had unchecked power to censor.
I do not have access to my main Facebook account.
I wasn't given an explanation. I was just like, what did I do?
It's not okay to shut down my voice simply because it's not the same as yours.
How those rules are enforced is something that the rest of us know very, very little about.
The First Amendment protects all of us from the government limiting our speech. The companies have the ability to decide what speech they will allow. They're not the government.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
Oh my God, the truck is sinking.
Devastating flooding has reached catastrophic levels.
Rising sea levels are threatening America's coasts.
You would have to take that house and put it on stilts 10 feet tall. If the street is filled with salt water, what difference does it make how high you make your house?
The highest rental rates is exactly where the elevation is highest.
This was the evidence to prove that climate gentrification was real.
Pay $1,800 in 5 days or you have to leave. Were you scared?
Yes.
Every single person who stood up and said, I am not paying this rent increase, received an eviction.
Haitians built this place and you're getting kicked out.
Yes.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
The COVID economic shutdown hit Las Vegas harder than any other major city in the nation.
It's decimated the entertainment community.
So even though it looks fairly busy, this is really just a fraction of what business was like prior to COVID.
Last week, there was another large hotel chain that 18,000 were let go.
I haven't seen any jobs that are even close to what I was making.
We're trying to keep things as normal for our kids. I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son.
And I see every day people losing their homes, having to leave Las Vegas.
If I have to start over somewhere else, I have to start over.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
The space flight company founded by Jeff Bezos will soon launch its 4th human mission aboard the New Shepard. The launch date was originally scheduled for March 23rd, but was delayed multiple times. 5 paying customers will be on board, including the chief architect of the New Shepard vehicle. And this comes as the Hubble Space Telescope spots the most distant single star it's ever observed. The star dates back to less than 1 billion years after the Big Bang and at least 50 times the mass of the sun. Time now is 7:54. Here's a look at what is coming up today. Former President Trump's son-in-law and top advisor Jared Kushner is expected to virtually testify before the January 6th committee. Now, investigators are trying to figure out Kushner's role and communications with Trump surrounding the attack on the Capitol. That is set to happen at around 9 a.m. Eastern. And the trial of ISIS fighter Al-Shafi al-Sheikh resumes in Alexandria, Virginia today. He's allegedly one of 4 British militants known as the Beatles, accused of kidnapping and conspiring to murder American journalists and aid workers, including Stephen Sotloff, James Foley, and Peter Kassig, and Kaylee Mueller. And President Biden will deliver remarks later on today. He's expected to address the administration's efforts to lower gas prices. That is set for 1:30 Eastern. And coming up in our 9 o'clock hour, we will have live coverage of the Blue Origin rocket launch. CBS News space analyst Bill Harwood and Star Harbor Space Academy senior advisor Alan Ladwig will join us for a preview of that epic journey. If you are heading out the door, take us with you. You can access all of our CBS News national and local streams for free anytime, anywhere by using the CBS News app. CBS Mornings is next, and I will see you in an hour.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Some Republicans are now accusing companies like Twitter and Facebook of targeting conservatives.
They've had unchecked power to censor.
I do not have access to my main Facebook account.
I wasn't given an explanation. I was just like, what did I do?
It's not okay to shut down my voice simply because it's not the same as yours.
How those rules are enforced is something that the rest of us know very, very little about.
The First Amendment protects all of us from the government limiting our speech. The companies have the ability to decide what speech they will allow. They're not the government.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
Oh my God, the truck is sinking.
Devastating flooding has reached catastrophic levels.
Rising sea levels are threatening America's coasts.
You would have to take that house and put it on stilts 10 feet tall. If the street is filled with salt water, what difference does it make how high you make your house?
The highest rental rates is exactly where the elevation is highest.
This was the evidence to prove that carbon gentrification was real.
Pay $1,800 in 5 days or you have to leave. Were you scared?
Yes.
Every single person who stood up and said, I am not paying this rent increase, received an eviction.
Haitians built this place and you're getting kicked out.
Yes.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We got it.
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
An original CBS Reports documentary.